Blowing, hot and cold, the intimate partner primary source. I don't get it. 1 minute he's all smiles and cuddles, and the next he acts like he doesn't even know me. I don't know what's going on. He makes arrangements for us to do things together, and then suddenly seems as if he isn't bothered. He was in a foul mood, and then suddenly he was being really nice to me, and I've no idea why he changed. Familiar sentiments? They arise when you are dealing with our kind, the narcissist. Why is it that 1 minute everything is wonderful and the next it all goes wrong? Why are there periods of elation and then periods of erosion? Why do we appear so inconsistent in the way that we behave with you? Let's begin with the intimate partner primary source, the IPPS. Whether you are the wife, boyfriend, partner, lover, the IPPS will always find themselves subject to this vacillating behavior. It is important to look at it within the context of the relevant dynamic between narcissist and intimate partner primary source with regard to the relevant periods of that dynamic. First of all, we have the seduction golden period. Once the victim has been installed as the primary source, which followed the victim's seduction as the intimate partner secondary source, this victim then reaps the rewards of being our primary source of the prime aims. You, as the intimate partner primary source, provide us with the most fuel. You're the one that's most under control. You're the one that provides us with most character traits, and the one that provides us with most residual benefits. You are the apple of our eye, the light of our life. There will be only the heat of manufactured passion, the warmth of apparent caring, and the fire of fabricated desire during this period. During this golden period, our fury is in effect capped, and therefore it will not manifest save in exceptional circumstances. This capping occurs for two reasons. The first is that you are embedded as the IPPS, and therefore, if you happen to challenge our control at this time, we are largely able to brush it off because A, we are being well-fueled in a positive manner, and B, we regard you as white. You are wonderful, and our mindset is such that the challenge doesn't have the same effect, because if it does occur, we will be more likely to respond with a benign manipulation to assert control once again. Secondly, even if we do begin to react to your challenge to our control, our narcissism is more effective at avoiding the exhibition of ignited fury at this stage because the narcissism doesn't want to lose you at this juncture, since you are the recently installed primary source and the main provider of the prime aims. Lashing out in a malign manner and risking losing you at this juncture would be entirely counterproductive, since there is no replacement waiting in the wings. Accordingly, the narcissism operates in effect to deal with the challenge by either not reacting to it, or if we do, we are more likely to respond in a benign way. For instance, with flattery, with charm, by saying, "Oh, it doesn't matter," by being kind and warm, supportive. And therefore, we keep you in place as the primary source, but only because you are viewed as white, and the challenge is not sufficient to dislodge you from that status at this juncture. There's also the fact, of course, that generally speaking during this period, because we're not causing a problem to you, you're more likely to respond in a manner which doesn't cause a challenge to us. You're not going to ask us where we've been, because of course you're in the golden period, we're not cheating on you. We are attentive, therefore you're not going to ask why we're suddenly being distant with you. We aren't giving you silent treatments, so you won't be asking us why are we doing these things, and therefore you are far less likely to challenge us in the first place, because you are in this golden period. Accordingly, it is extremely rare to witness the narcissist blow hot and cold during seduction for these reasons. You might occasionally experience this from a lesser narcissist who is challenged early in the golden or more likely bronze period, who is unable to assert sufficient control, and accordingly they may well erupt, derailing the seduction. But this is unusual. The devaluation period. This is when you are far more likely as the IPPS to experience the alternating between hot and cold. There are a variety of reasons why this happens. The first reason is that which occurs in the instant and is a consequence of a response to your challenge. If you say, or more likely do something, which wounds or is challenge fuel, then this is perceived by us through our lens as a challenge to our control. Remember, where this occurs with a lesser or mid-range narcissist, this occurs in the unconscious. Where it occurs with a greater or the ultra, we are aware of this. Bear in mind, it may not seem like a challenge from your perspective. Indeed, you are usually at a complete loss as to why we have reacted as we have. The blowing hot and cold which occurs in the instant is naturally seen as your fault. Whatever it is that you have said or done, and it has been perceived as a challenge, results in us having to assert control over you. Your challenge affects our control over you, and our self-defense mechanisms activate through the churning fury that is ever present, causing it to be ignited. This happens more often with lesser and mid-range narcissists, because those members of our brethren are far less able to control their fury with the same skill and discipline as the greaters and the ultra. The ignited fury may then manifest as heated fury, as we erupt and call you names, break things, slam doors, hit you and such like. Accordingly, all was going well, and then you most likely wounded us or presented with challenge fuel, and therefore this resulted in our volcanic rage erupting, where you're dealing with a narcissist that operates through heated fury, and the situation becomes superheated. Alternatively, this ignited fury emerges as cold fury, whereby you are subjected to a baleful glare, being cold-shouldered and treated to silent treatments. The situation becomes ice cold. In the blink of an eye, you, unwittingly, have unbalanced the situation through your challenge to our control. Our reaction is based on self-defense. Since you are in the sustained devaluation period, the cap on our fury that existed during the seduction period has now been removed. Accordingly, it is only a matter of time before you do or say something which ignites our fury, and boom, we react. 1 minute we are enjoying a family film, and the next we've thrown the popcorn across the room and we are glaring at you from our armchair. The movement from all being calm results in this eruption. The reason that the fury ignites, whether it's heated or cold, is out of necessity to cause an intense reaction, so that the narcissist responds immediately to assert control over you, and that you are prompted to have a reaction to it, and thus you provide us with fuel, or others do who witness the explosion. Ordinarily, the ignited fury is directed towards the person who has caused the criticism, in effect by way of punishment, and the need to cause them to atone for their transgression. By insulting you, striking you, spitting at you, shoving you, glaring at you, sitting and sulking, our narcissism is aiming to prompt an emotional response from you and to assert control. Your response, of course, provides us with fuel and signals that you are under control. Once you provide us with this fuel, the wound that you have caused is healed, and our ignited fury abates. Control has been obtained. Consequently, we then carry on as if nothing has happened, and therefore we revert to being pleasant. Accordingly, in the space of a few minutes, we go from calm to furious and then calm again. We've blown hot and cold, and of course, it has to be your fault, because our narcissism means that we are never at fault. This is how we blow hot and cold in an instant. And whilst theoretically this could happen at any stage in the narcissistic dynamic, it happens most with the intimate partner primary source during devaluation. We also blow hot and cold with you over an elongated period because of the need for contrast. Isaac Newton's third law stated, "For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction." Whilst this was directed in the field of physics, this is of equal application to the narcissistic dynamic. We have to create contrast in order to derive the most potent fuel. If we dig a ditch which is 10 feet deep and shove you in it, you'll probably be hurt as you fall into the ditch. If we build a tower 30 feet high next to the ditch and push you from the top of the tower, then you have a 40-foot drop and will suffer far more greatly owing to this starker contrast. When we are seducing you, we are devaluing someone else. When we are devaluing you, we are seducing somebody else. When we allow you a respite period during the sustained devaluation, it is because we have turned against somebody else, and thus we see you as white once again. When we start devaluing you again as the IPPS, it is because we are savouring the resumption of seduction of another, or perhaps starting a seduction new with a new appliance. It is all about the creation of that contrast. If there are times when we've walked into the house and we begin berating you from the moment we arrive, and you are at a loss to even identify what you've done to cause this, the belittling commenced the moment we step through the doorway. What has happened is that we have been with somebody else, not necessarily in an intimate way. It might have been a non-intimate secondary source, a friend. And we've gained their positive fuel. And that then, as we see you, are reminded of the fact that you're painted black, and that we are devaluing you. This causes us to continue to regard you as black, and therefore we are unpleasant to you as soon as we first appear, and we continue being so until your emotional response fuels us and we stop. If we are driving and we cut up another driver who then pulls up alongside us, and we swear at him and threaten to get out of the car and stamp on his trachea until it bubbles, we gain negative fuel from the other driver's frightened or upset or angry response. We can then turn to you, even in devaluation, and smile and kiss you on the cheek to enjoy the positive fuel that you then provide, which contrasts with the negative fuel that we've just obtained. Of course, because we compartmentalise, we are able to do this readily. Accordingly, when we are seducing somebody else, we see them as white, and thus you are black, because we need the contrast between the two of you. The intimate partner secondary source that we are seducing is seen as wonderful, and all the more because we then despise you, and you as the IPPS are seen as awful, and all the more because we adore the IPSS. The contrast makes the fuel from both sources all the more potent. If we decide to give you a respite period, and remember this is instinctive where dealing with a lesser or mid-range narcissist, or is calculated where greater are the ultra, it is because a non-intimate secondary source may well have been disloyal, and therefore we've devalued them, and therefore your dogged loyalty to us is suddenly seen as a good thing. It might also be because the IPPS that we've been cultivating isn't delivering as we expected, and therefore, whilst our disappointment in them is not sufficient to cause us to give them a sustained devaluation, instead we give them a corrective one, and we put them on the shelf, and then you get a respite period. All of the various appliances that we have connected to us impact upon one another, and most of all upon you as the IPPS, wheels within wheels. Thus, during the devaluation period, you will find us behaving okay with you, when we are neither especially pleasant or horrible, but then suddenly we shift to being unpleasant, and then a respite period comes out of nowhere. It appears arbitrary and inconsistent to you, but there is actually a consistent logic behind it from our perspective. The disengagement. What about the period post-disengagement, where you were once the IPPS and now you become the former intimate partner primary source? We once adored you, and now we do not even acknowledge you. This is because we are focused on a new primary source and have no interest in you. This is why, if you stay out of our spheres of influence and the Hoover execution criteria is unlikely to be met, you will invariably hear nothing from us in the immediate aftermath of disengagement. Then, at a later juncture, we appear with smiles and compliments as we apply a benign follow-up Hoover. Our approach to you is altered again, and yet you've done nothing. In such an instance, we are now devaluing your replacement, and you've become painted white, and thus, where we were cold with you, we now come back as hot, and we want some delicious Hoover fuel from you. A Hoover was triggered. You might have done it, or it just occurred by your entry into the sixth sphere. And the Hoover execution criteria has been met, particularly so because your replacement is now being devalued. And thus, we come after you for that positive Hoover fuel. Deny it us, however, and this will challenge us, and therefore we may well shift in an instant to a malign Hoover. Again, you become puzzled as to why our attitude towards you has altered so quickly. But from the narcissistic perspective, it makes perfect sense. If you rebuff our Hoover, you've either wounded us or given challenge fuel, and the first instance is to try and assert control over you directly through the first assertion of control, and therefore the easiest way to do so is to gain some fuel from you, and therefore we shift to a malign Hoover to seek negative fuel from you to heal the wound that you have caused, and to gain control over you. If you approach us when we are infatuated with your replacement, you will be either ignored or you may be given a malign Hoover, because at that time your replacement is regarded as white, we want nothing to do with you, and you remain black because we disengaged from you because effectively you were no good to us. And therefore this brings out the opposite and equally strong reaction. We blow hot and cold because of the ignition of our fury in the instant, and also because of this repeated need to create contrast and accord with the principle of opposite and equal reactions. This is based upon our black and white thinking. This enables us to create the contrast that our needs demand, and consequently causes us to blow hot and cold with you. Sometimes the hot will appear as passion and desire. Sometimes the hot will appear as rage. Sometimes the cold appears as indifference and disinterest. Other times it is cold fury through a silent treatment and ignoring you. The effects of blowing hot and cold are as follows. 1. The gathering of fuel. This is to power the construct, and also, in certain instances, to heal the wound caused by your criticism. 2. To maintain control over you. 3. To underline our omnipotence by being able to control you. 4. To emphasize our notion of superiority. 5. To disorientate you, so that you are easier to control, because you fail to comprehend what is actually happening. 6. To create an apparent lack of consistency, which prevents your understanding, thus adding to your confusion, again making it easier to control. 7. The prevention of you being able to move forward, because you're emotional, confused and disorientated. All of the above fits together so that there will be wheels within wheels as we blow hot and cold with you. If you remain uncertain as to why the narcissist is blowing hot and cold with you when you are the intimate partner primary source, please do avail yourself of a consultation with me, and armed with the facts of your current situation, I will unravel the mystery for you. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.